Meeting will now come to order. We're having the Fayette County School Corporation's Board of School Trustees business meeting. Welcome all of you here this evening. And normally we do the Pledge of Allegiance at this time, but we have as our guest tonight from Grandview, Mrs. Hubbard, and just hang on and you'll understand why we bypassed for the present time. So, Mrs. Hubbard, thank you and your students for being here. We turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, you are so welcome. And first thing, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here tonight, and thanks for giving me this job. It is something I get to look forward to every day, and every day is the best day of my life. And you'll find out why that's significant when you listen to this and watch what's going on. So are you ready, Ryan?
Yes.
The news team, this is how we start our day. The news team is really made up of six sixth graders. As you can see, only half of them came this evening, but these guys are so good, they're going to make it happen anyway, because the news must go on. Ready?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Johnson, and I am the video recorder and director of WCNN, Wildcats News Network. On Mondays of each week, we start out with intercom announcements. The rest of the week, provided Mrs. Hubbard doesn't have meetings, we record announcements for the next day, and Mrs. Hubbard posts them on our special YouTube channel. We either present intercom announcements or our teachers pull up the video announcements to start the day every morning. In a minute, you will watch us in action as we show you how we get it done.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jace McMichael. Welcome to WCNN Wildcats News Network. We are Wait, you gotta read Lawrence's part first.
Here, we're punting, remember?
Hi. Sadly, Lawrence couldn't make it tonight, and he controls the teleprompter. His job is very important because the news team reads what he displays on the screen. Technically, the teleprompter is just a Google Doc on Mrs. Hubbard's laptop, but it works for our purposes. Although he is rarely in front of the camera, he really enjoys his job. You will see that as we go into action.
Okay, now go sit down. Okay, ready, director?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jace McMichael. I would like to welcome you to...
Well, teleprompter's having difficulties.
Welcome you to WCNN Wildcats News Network. We are representing Grandview Elementary each day. I announce the date and the exciting things that are going on around the school. After the announcements this evening, we will show you a quick slideshow of a typical day at our school.
Hello everyone. Today I'm Tess Montgomery. My name is Tess Montgomery. I read the menu choices for the day. We usually have another student on the team, but she was not able to make it tonight. We fill in each other for when one of us is absent. We make a great team. Hannah Vaughn, the local weather reporter, is not here today. She lets students and staff know what to expect in the weather forecast for Connersville. The slideshow we are showing tonight shows snapshots of the developing culture and climate of Grandview Elementary. We learn, we laugh, and we operate as a family with the total purpose of boosting self-esteem and student achievement. Enjoy.
The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by students from Grandview who happen to be some of our siblings. Cooper Montgomery, Jasmine McMichael. Please stand and join us for a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a great day, Wildcats!
Mrs. Hubbard, thank you. Students, thank you for being with us this evening. And parents, grandparents, whoever came with them, we appreciate your being here. We're going to be moving into our business part of our meeting, and you're certainly welcome to stay, but if you prefer to leave, well, this would be an appropriate time for you to do that. So again, thank you for being here. While he's giving them thank you, appreciation, we'll go ahead with this next item, the one item. We do need a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Savoy. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. We'll hang on here for just a minute for Dr. Hodges' return.
I hope there's enough candy to go around.
Okay, we'll move right on now to the next item on our agenda, which is patron comments on agenda items. And I believe that we have two people who are wanting to speak, and I'll remind you that you need to introduce yourself, tell us your address, and that you have 5 minutes max to speak. The first I see is Lester, is it Schaefer?
Schaefer?
Would you come to the stand, please?
Absolutely. I'm not very good at public speaking. And I know a few of you here, Lori and Warren, they probably don't remember me at all. But I've been reading in the paper about the new appointment for superintendent. Don't even know the gentleman. Don't really think nothing about it, except $160-some thousand per year, guaranteed for 4 years. And our new board members, whoever they are, should have a right to vote on that. That is ridiculous here in Connersville. He may be worth every penny of it. I'm not going to make that argument. I don't know who he is. Is it you? You might be worth every penny of it.
My wife thinks so.
Seriously, really. But here in Connersville, we do not have that type of money to pay that salary. Our economy's terrible. I would say that 80% of the children that come to our schools, parents don't make $30,000 a year. We're in bad situation. And he may be worth $165,000. The only thing that I would say is go to where where they can afford it. We can't afford it here. Our taxes are terrible. You all know what the economy's done, and I'm pointing at Lori because she's a realtor. And Warren, you all know what the economy's done. Probably is not near with what it used to be. And if you go to the auditor's office, She's got several hundred appeals every year. People say, wait a minute, where are you getting these values? We have to do something to curtail it. And it starts at the top and comes down. The comments that I have heard from a lot of people is, really? We're going to do this? When everything else is pretty well in the dumps. Pay attention to the taxpayer. I'm one of them, and so are you. We have to do something to stop it. Give your new school board a chance. Let them be involved in it. And as I understand, quote me if I'm wrong, somebody tell me, you would be guaranteed 160, whatever it is, thousand per year for 3 years. Is that correct?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. Have you ever had a job where you're guaranteed a salary for 3 years, no matter what your performance is? I venture to say nobody here has.
I did not negotiate a contract, wasn't involved with that, but let me say, by state statute, a new superintendent coming in has to be given a 3-year contract. That's the law. And anytime you extend that contract, it has to go up for 3 years. So that's that piece of it. And I will say that in the contract, there are some performance pieces that if performance isn't where it's supposed to be, there are some guarantees that don't move forward. So there are some things that are based on evaluation.
Okay, which it should be.
Just responding to your question, sir.
Okay. Then we should also give our new school board a chance to vote on it also and give their 2 cents worth. And stop this lame duck, whatever we want to call it, where we go ahead and vote it in, and the people that are coming in is going to have to put up with it for ever how many years it is, 3 years. That's all I have to say. And I'm just a taxpayer.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Okay, the next person that would like to speak is, Jason Waterman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jason Waterman. I live at 3278 Serenity Parkway. I come before you just as an average citizen tonight, but for those of you who don't know, I also have been privileged to be able to serve on the Fayette County Board of Zoning Appeals and Area Plan Commission for probably upwards of 15 plus years, I would say, Carl, and have also been appointed as either chair or vice chair of the 2 boards probably for the last 10 years running. But what I wanted to bring to your attention tonight is a discrepancy that I found in your procedures policies as posted on your website. In policy 1.18 under agendas, it reads, items of business suggested by individuals other than the board or superintendent shall be submitted in writing and received in the office of the superintendent at least 7 days before the meeting in order to be considered for inclusion on the agenda. The very next section of your policies, as again posted on your website, section 1.19, and this in particular is in relation to public participation. It reads, persons or groups who have petitions or proposals that they would like to submit for school board consideration shall submit the petition or proposal in writing to the superintendent at least 8 days preceding the next regular school board meeting in order that it may be included on that meeting's agenda. So in one portion it says 7, another portion it says 8. Normally, that's not a huge problem. However, tonight, it could be. Because your last meeting, which was the special session last week, was exactly 8 days ago, after the close of business hours. So if somebody had an issue that they wanted to bring forward as a result of the testimony of the previous meeting, part of your rules of procedure would allow it, and part of your rules of procedure would not. Now, based on my experience on the APC and the BZA, what we would have done on those boards is to table whatever business we had, corrected our rules of procedure, and then at the next meeting or some future time, bring up the procedure or the business in front of us under the new updated policies so that everything could be above board. To move forward with contradictory and conflicting policies would be controversial, possibly scandalous, and could, for someone who wished to, be cause for a lawsuit, which we do not need to have. So I just wanted to bring that up to you tonight, that there is this discrepancy that should be fixed, and let you know how I, as the chair or vice chair of those two boards, would handle it on those boards. So if you'd like copies of the procedures that I've copied off the website, you are welcome to them, but I bring that forward to you tonight. And in closing, I want to say that as the board, as any type of a government body, we need to make sure that we avoid scandal, avoid, well, maybe not controversy, but at least avoid even the apparition of scandal. And as a school board, as it says right there, always think in terms of children first. Moving forward under a hint of scandal for something that would take 3 years in this case, I don't know that I could say in good conscience, if I was in your shoes, that I would be putting the children first. So, thank you very much for your attendance and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Waterman. And I believe that's all that wants to speak publicly. Yes, okay. Okay, that ends the patron comments on the agenda items. Next item is the board will consider a recommendation for the superintendent of schools, and Warren Taylor, who is the chairman of our transition committee, will speak now.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to start out by saying that the school board employed counsel throughout this process, and we have been assured by counsel that we are in compliance with Indiana law. So whatever our policy may or may not say would be incidental. According to counsel, we're in compliance with Indiana law. This process actually occurred in two points, or in two areas. The history of the selection of the superintendent actually began on or around June 2015, at what time the board was made aware that Dr. Hodges would be retiring sometime in the near future. On or around that same date, the previous assistant superintendent, Dr. Reiki, left the Fayette County School Corporation. This created an opportunity that the board wisely recognized to test drive, so to speak, sorry to say that, the next superintendent. So with this in mind, the board hired Scott Collins on August in 2015 as the assistant superintendent, with caveat that should his performance meet expectations and if he attained proper licensing, he would be hired as superintendent at the retirement of Dr. Hodges. Some 14 months later, Dr. Hodges did in fact notify the board by letter that he intended to retire January the 31st, 2017. Finally, Mr. Collins' performance and licensing met the board's expectations, and he is, by agreement, selected as the new superintendent. So that the selection of the superintendent occurred over a period of time that began on or around August 2015. With all that, I was contacted by Mr. Burchett, the board president, and asked to form and chair a transition committee. When solicited, Mrs. Kirschner and Mr. Hunt both agreed to serve as committee members. The committee met 3 times. Meeting 1 was the full committee along with Mr. Collins. The purpose of that meeting was to affirm his intention as superintendent for the Fayette County School Corporation. At which time Mr. Collins did affirm same intention, and the committee then agreed to have the board attorney represent the board in negotiations and to handle all necessary in compliance to Indiana law regarding the hiring of the superintendent. With this instruction, I contacted Mrs. Begala, the school board attorney, and she agreed to assist the board in the process. Meeting 2 was the full committee, again, along with Mr. Collins and Mrs. Begala. This meeting related to contract discussion. Resulted with the committee instructing Mrs. Begala and Mr. Collins to perform negotiations and notify the committee when they were finished. Meeting 3 was the last meeting, and it included Mr. Collins, Mrs. Begala, counsel again, Mrs. Kirschner, myself, all in person, with Mr. Hunt present by a telephone connection, as he was unable to physically be here. Were you able to hear and understand everything that went on in that committee meeting, Mr. Hunt?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. The purpose of this meeting was to receive and review the proposed contract. Having done all these things and made sure that we were in compliance with state law, the committee made the unanimous recommendation that Mr. Collins be hired as superintendent per the advertised contract.
I move to accept it.
Okay,
Do we have a second?
yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion has been made to accept the consideration
It's
of
a
the
recommendation.
recommendation of the superintendent of schools, and seconded by Mr. Taylor.
The motion was actually to employ the superintendent.
Would you like for me to read this again?
Please.
The recommendation
Yeah,
by
I'm not
the
sure
committee?
exactly your motion.
Sure. The committee makes the unanimous recommendation that Mr. Collins be hired as superintendent per the advertised contract.
I'd like to speak to this because I was on that committee, and at the time that we were given the contract, the complete package was not in the contract, and it came back later. The only thing that was in the original contract was the base pay and also the car allowance. As far as the actual terms of the entire contract, I did not know them until they were published as required by law. So the compensation package was not in something, and actually, Mr. Collins had to get that information to Mrs. Begala before it was published, because there was a time frame issue with getting it published in the newspaper, because they had to have those figures in by a particular time in order for Mr. Sprague to get them into the newspaper in a timely manner, so we could have the public hearing in a timely manner before this board meeting, which I thought was the 8th of November at the time, but then the board meeting was moved. So and maybe it was my misperception, but the contract that I saw had $125,000 as the base pay, and also had the car allowance were the only 2 set figures in that contract. And then it was made public with all the things in the newspaper as required by law. So that was the first time I saw that complete package. But I wanted to make that clear.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak? All right, the motion has been made and seconded that we hire Mr. Collins as superintendent as per contract. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And all those opposed, your right hand. So the motion carries 5 to 1. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is our consent agenda, which contains several items, and I'll break those down for you. The approval of the minutes from the regular business meeting of 10/11/16 and special session of 11/7/16. The personnel report, which included retirements, resignations, leaves of absence. The approval of the October 2016 claims, number 44425 through number 44767. Donations, a donation of $4,988 from the CHS Backstop Booster Club, and a donation of $1,700 in memory of Joe Connell for WCC. Those are the consent agenda items. Do I hear a motion to accept these items?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move to accept.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mrs. Savoy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And opposed, and the motion carries 6-0. Okay, the next items are action items, and we will now consider a recommendation for Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Bayer.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett, Dr. Hodges, and members of the board. I would ask the board's consideration of Mrs. Kim Casaro as the new Assistant Superintendent for Learning for FCSC. Mrs. Casaro is a Franklin County High School graduate who earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Education from Indiana University East in 1997. She also earned a science endorsement at that time. In May of 2003, Mrs. Casaro earned her Master's of Arts in Education degree from Ball State University, and following that, she completed her Educational and Administrative and Supervisor certification in 2006. Most recently, Kim has been working on her Educational Specialist degree and School Superintendent's license, which she's expected to complete in August of 2017. Mrs. Casaro's entire career has been spent with FCSC, beginning as a science teacher at CMS from 1998 to 2002. During the 2002-2005 school year, she was an elementary teacher at both Grandview and Eastview schools. Following the completion of her administrative work, she was selected as principal of Maplewood Elementary in August of 2005 and remains in that position. In her tenure, Mrs. Casaro has served as RTI coordinator and presenter for FCSC, mentored other new administrators, served as the safety school specialist, and received the Sally Mae Outstanding First Year Teacher Award in 1997. Mrs. Casaro is married to Tony Casaro, has 3 children, Gabe and Brady, both 6th graders, and AJ, a junior at CHS. Fayette County School Corporation is extremely pleased to recommend Mrs. Kim Casaro to serve as the new Assistant Superintendent of Learning beginning February 1, 2017. Now for your consideration this evening, Mr. Burchett.
Thank you, Dr. Bayer. You've heard the recommendation for Kim Casaro to be the Assistant Superintendent of our Fayette County School Corporation schools. What is your pleasure, Board?
Go ahead, Chris.
Mr. President, I make that recommendation that we hire Kim Casaro as the new Assistant Superintendent of the Fayette County School Corporation.
Thank you, Mr. Hunch. Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Any discussion?
It's no surprise to anyone, and I have nothing against Kim. She's done a wonderful job at Maplewood, but I am in total agreement with Mr. Schaefer and many other citizens of Fayette County in that an assistant superintendent for learning is a wonderful luxury that we cannot afford. We have teachers' assistants working every day with our children that could make more money at McDonald's. We have a finite amount of money to spend on our students. And if we take money from one place, clearly we don't have to have it. We don't have it in another. And this is not, it wasn't personal with Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is a fine man, and I'm sure he'll be a good superintendent. But this, to me, is strictly a matter of principle. I don't think this board had the right to vote, given the election, and I don't think that it is in the best interest financially of our children to hire any assistant superintendent. Teachers and other people in the corporation have been asked to do more with less for a very, very long time, and I think as administration, we should set an example with that. The staff of central office has not been decreased. We've closed 2 schools, we've lost kids. We're not the same corporation we were when we had an assistant superintendent. And there was talk at the time that Dr. Reiki retired of not hiring that on, just let it go by attrition. And to my mind, that would have been the better thing to do. I'm sure in any job that Mrs. Casaro did, she would do an excellent job. I just think that an assistant superintendent is a luxury given our economic situation and given the neediness of our students. We need more people on the front lines with our children in the classroom. We need to pay our teaching assistants more than they would get paid working at a fast food restaurant. And we need more of them. And the salary for any administrator is large, and they're worth it, okay? That's not the issue. But if we don't spend $100,000 one place, then we have it to spend someplace else. And to my mind, we need to spend it on those who work more directly with the children on a day-to-day basis. Because go in the classrooms, go see how people are stretched and how hard and how dedicated they are. And we don't pay them very well. What does that tell our children where our priorities are? And again, it's not personal at all. I think if we could afford it, it would be a good thing to have. But I don't think we can. And for that reason, I can't support it as a matter of principle.
May I speak to that? Certainly. I come from the opposite angle that Ann comes from. I'm a school board member, but my wife is one of these aides that Ann talks about. I know how important the superintendent's job is and the assistant superintendent's job. I can make a decision on that, but I would not take a single dime away from the superintendent's salary or the assistant superintendent's salary to give my wife a raise, because I know how important those 2 positions are. I've seen fires put out by both positions. I see what work these 2 individuals do, and I see what a position that the corporation is in right now. And I would not eliminate these 2 positions at all, because they're, to me, in the way I've seen them work, these 2 positions are too important to be eliminated, particularly at this time. And like I said, I know because I come from both directions, because I'm involved with a wife who is an aide in this school corporation. So I think I have a little bit more personal knowledge on this situation. So I come from the opposite. I would not jeopardize either position. I would not take a dime away from the salaries, because they've earned them. They've earned them. I hear this argument. I've heard this argument from the background I come from. I used to hear from troopers who are angry because their salaries is nowhere near what the superintendent of the state police is. Folks, they're 2 different animals. We tend to mix apples with oranges, and I can appreciate that, folks. But folks, the problem that I see here is you have to compare superintendents with other superintendents. You can't compare superintendents with someone that makes money at McDonald's or a factory worker over at Stance. There's no comparison. If you want to compare what the superintendent makes over in Union County, much smaller. His salary is 6 figures, okay? Just like it is here. Franklin County, I can pull out my figures. I think their base pay is $115,000. His is $125,000. That's basically comparable. They have fewer students. So folks, that's why you have to compare salaries. And one more thing, folks. I'm still trying to understand this thing where this board has not got a right to vote on this contract. Folks, I was put on this board to make decisions. coming from the background I do, as a police officer, semi-military background, I'm not geared to wait to make decisions. The citizens of Fayette County trust me. They delegate responsibilities to me. They trust in my decisions. No disrespect to the new board members, but they haven't worked with Scott over the last year. I have. I've seen what he has done. I've seen the dedication that he has made, particularly to the at-risk students, the throwaway kids. Scott has made his mission by saying, you know, you're not going to drop out. You're going to hang into the school system. You're going to hang on. You're going to hang in there on the schools. You know, with this. You know, you're going to stay in school is what I'm trying to say. So, you know, that is this current board's decision on who we hire and that salary. That's the way I'm geared, okay? I'm up for re-election in 2 years. If you're not satisfied with the decisions that I make, I'll know about it then. But folks, I think individuals have, you know, put me on a board for a purpose, and I don't have to wait. I mean, we could put this off. Every time we put off decisions such as that, it costs the taxpayers money. Every executive session, we get paid to be up here. I don't think it's necessary. I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to do the job. That's what we did this evening. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Anybody else want to speak?
Sure. I'd like to speak to the issue of not having an assistant superintendent. Over the 10 years that I've been involved in this corporation, we've made tremendous strides. All things considered, this corporation has outperformed. I put it up against any corporation in the state of Indiana. I really would. And we didn't get there by cutting heads or trying to go on the cheap. You only get what you pay for, and I think our students deserve the best we can provide for them. Maybe some of you don't, but I do. I think our students deserve the very best that we're able to provide. Those kids need it, they deserve it. Secondly, I'd like to know in what democracy do candidates elect get to assume any official duty prior to being sworn in? And that's where we are. Can President Trump right now, can he change our foreign policy before January the 20th of 2016? No. Can President Trump introduce legislation into effect prior to January the 20th, 2016? No. So my question is why should anybody else be treated any different? Democracies have rules and regulations, or they don't function. And this is one of them. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's fine. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Anybody else?
I understand where Mr. Hunt comes from. I understand.
I don't think you do, Ann.
I do. But I also spend time in the schools, and I spend time with the kids, and it's really easy to do this. As to Warren's point, there's a court case called Marbury versus Madison that I'm sure Mr. Beard is well aware of. It's not that we didn't have the legal right to do it. We did, clearly. This board has the legal right to do it. But with the wholesale, the wholesale changes in this board, there will be 3 new members on the board. This is a contract for 3 years. It's not that we didn't have the legal right to do it. To me, it's the issue of.
And I'm saying that we don't have to wait.
But if the students of Fayette County were going to be
This
anyway negatively impacted by putting off this decision, it would be one thing. But I don't see how our students are going to be negatively impacted by waiting. That's, we're going to agree to disagree here, and hopefully that, we can all be adults about this. I'm very passionate in my feelings. Chris is very passionate in his. okay? But the bottom line is, the best interest of the kids here in Fayette County is what we should all be interested in. Your view and my view of how those things are accomplished are different, okay? I come from a different perspective, being a classroom teacher for 30 years and volunteering in this community, which I think gives me good cause. If you disagree with me, fine, that's fine, and I will work with whoever. It's not personal with Scott, it's certainly not personal with Kim, but I just cannot, I think that what we're doing is just morally wrong as far as my personal morals are concerned. And I will not compromise that. I did it once, I won't do it again, so, fine.
Okay, we need to get back. We're getting out of order here. We have a motion to hire Kim Casaro as Assistant Superintendent of Schools. We have a motion and we have a second. Okay, if you have discussion, it needs to be considering her as Assistant Superintendent.
Good
These
point.
things are already passed, so.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So any other discussion? All right, all of those in favor, please raise your right hand. And all opposed, and the motion carries 5-1. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is our personnel report. We have recommendations of employment from Dr. Bader.
Thank you again, Mr. Burchett, Dr. Hodgson, board members. Several items for your consideration this evening. First of all, under employment considerations, support staff Terry Davidson as the isolated instruction supervisor at CMS, and also extracurricular Don Crum as the 7th grade girls red basketball coach beginning October 12th. In addition to that, in your background information, I've provided some information on several items. First off is a letter of agreement for an adjustment for additional compensation for Joanne Appleman. On your Friday letter that was sent out was an explanation about Joanne having taken on additional responsibilities covering our newest speech language pathologist and also a recently hired speech language pathologist assistant, and that would involve extra hours for her because they do not have all the full qualifications to be a full-fledged SLP. So as a result of that, we've made a provision to provide a stipend to cover her time involved in overseeing the work of those two individuals at $500 per semester for 26 or more students, $750 per semester for 51 or more students above and beyond her caseload, and $1,000 stipend per semester for 75 or more students. The first distribution we made on or about the end of this calendar year. Secondly, I'd like to go through the recommendation for approval of salary and benefit changes. First up, the administrative group. Technology and cell phone allowance would be increased to $600 annually beginning for the 2016-2017 school year. At your table tonight, I was unable to get into the Friday letter, but it's your table tonight, information and background on Mr. John Green, who had done a nice job of completing all the IASBO facilities and director certification program and the courses that he took. He put a lot of time and effort into that program, and that is, we're asking for a $2,000 additional one-time base salary increase for him, 16-17. In addition, a $2,000 stipend to be paid after state test results are finalized if the administrator is highly effective or effective for 15-16. And this is the same performance pay distribution as teachers rated highly effective or effective would receive. If any state performance grant money in 15-16 is granted, administrators rated highly effective or effective should receive the same amount as teachers, and we'll add this to the appendix so it's covered for all future years. A base increase for 17-18, and the stipend in item 3, $1,000, half of the paid stipend multiplied by the day factor, administrator contracted days divided by 185, teacher days, and multiplied by the administrative factor not to exceed $2,000. And then on 16-17 performance pay, utilize the same per point value, which is $662 as teachers in the formula for performance-based 17-18 increase. That was also listed in your information, that chart. There are also included in the handout on your background information an example of that for a 220-day administrator. For example, those would basically be our elementary principals. The computation would be, the first one, adding the $2,000 stipend, knowing that we're going with 1,000 divided by the 185 and following that formula. that would be $1486.49. And then if we use the chart that I just alluded to for a fifth-year elementary principal, 5 consecutive years, that amount would be approximately $943.35. So the overall increase based for that big contract for 17-18 would be around $2,430 for that. That's in line with what we do with the teachers. I remember I shared with you with the teacher contract when we passed that a couple of months ago, that would be, each teacher would receive approximately $1,500 to $2,500 on their base salary based on their performance and so forth. So it's very much in line with those. Responsibility factors are in there for information as to how we use that formula to get there. The classified staff, this is excluding bus drivers. We have this bus drivers separate because they are a little bit different in how we approach with them and trying to figure out their increases. The classified staff not currently receiving an opportunity to use the 2 personal days from sick leave will have this benefit added, so they will all have 4 personal days to use. A stipend of 3.5% of 15-16 based on the calculated annualized pay for those persons evaluated highly effective or effective for 15-16. The way we calculate that would be 8 hours, an example that would be 8 hours per day times 261 days for a 261-day employee times $10 per hour equals $20,880, and at 3.5% of that of 2880 would be $730.80 would be that stipend for that example that's also in your background. The base increase for 2017 and 2018 would be 1.3% for all classified staff. In addition, we've set aside a pool of money of $100,000 established for February 1, 2017 base increases to bring up the pay for competitive market. We have a number of folks that we're looking at, and Janie did a really nice job of helping us with this whole process in our classified staff committee to look at several positions such as secretarial, mechanics, TAs, maintenance folks, to make sure we are being competitive. So we looked at several different ways to look at that. A market survey, which Janie did a nice job of distributing to our group and sent out to several school corporations. I've been in touch with Economic Growth, and there's a report for Region 6 that has information that includes Blackford, Delaware, Fayette, Henry J, Randolph, Rush, Union, and Wayne counties. Input from our classified staff committee, where do they think these positions should fall? We're going through that right now to determine, do they think that's a fair amount for a mechanic or a maintenance person or TA pay? Is that in line or is that not in line? So we're working through that whole process at this point in time. And our goal in this $100,000, if we use all of that to bring up the salaries greater, if there's anything left, we will then use that to balance, utilize the annualized wages as outlined for 2017-28 increases to add that back into the pot of money that will go back to the people that are aboard, and it could increase that 1.3% salary increase. The recommendation for this for the classified staff would be identified and returned to the board for approval at a future date, but due to the nature of the urgency of wanting to do that and the importance of doing that, to make sure we're up to date on that, we would do that prior to January 31, 2017. I think, Jane, we talked about probably doing that as early as maybe even next month sometime is what the goal is.
Yeah, our committee's meeting
Thursday
to finalize a recommendation, and that will go to the negotiating committee and hopefully to the full board.
And we'll have all those exact figures
Yes.
at the time of the next meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
we'll present what the recommendation, look at all those factors, Janie's study, the study from the economic growth, and the recommendation from this committee that has input into that. So, the last area I have for you tonight is the bus driver compensation. Right now, currently, bus drivers are making 21.60 cents per hour. They will receive a stipend of $483. Those drivers working 120 days or more evaluated as effective or highly effective for 15-16, and then working also in 16-17. That stipend to be paid at the same time as the certified and classified staff stipends. And no raise was given in the fall of 2016, therefore an increase of the hourly rate to $21.83 would be effective January 1, 2017, again for those rated effective or highly effective in 15-16 and working 120 days or more. And then an hourly rate increase to $22.38 per hour effective August 1, 2017 for all those rated effective or highly effective this particular school year, the 16-17 school year, and working 120 days or more. It's not fully comparable to increase to all the groups, it's very close. However, we did increase the bus driver pay last year for field trips, layover time if you remember, and so that we've wanted to balance all that out and looking at the big picture, trying to be fair to all employee groups and treat them as equally as possible. In addition, one other thing we're able to do for the very first time is, and Janie, looking at the figures on this, the Affordable Care Act contribution towards health insurance to 5 bus drivers scheduled and working the most hours per day, provided the amount of the hours exceeds 6 hours per day. And the estimated cost of that would be about $23,000 per year if all 5 would happen to take that insurance. We've been meeting with them this last week, and we'll be working on finalizing if they're eligible for that. They're running some numbers for themselves to make sure it's the best deal for them, and so that's all being taken care of. So with that, Mr. Burchett, all those items for your consideration this evening.
Okay, quite a lengthy report there, but thanks, Dr. Bayer. A lot of work went into that.
Sure.
Thank you for that information. So you've heard this report. Do I hear a motion to accept this report?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move to accept that report.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Kirschner. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And opposed, and the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item is Public Law 221 School Improvement Plans. And Mr. Collins, we will turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett, Board, Dr. Hodges. Each year, the state requires under Public Law 221 the submission of school improvement plans. This year has proven to be a little bit of a challenge with our data, as our principals can attest that we're still waiting for some information to be released, and it makes it a little difficult to put forth another 3-year plan when you don't have all that. But our principals have done a great job with their leadership teams, and in your packets are the executive summaries. As a part of that, there is a state requirement that the union president, Amanda Butcher, and Dr. Hodges sign off on the 3-year PD timelines for professional development, and both have done that. We have those signatures on file in each of our school offices, so I submit these to you for approval for the school improvement plans for the next 3 years.
So everything has been met then, right? And approved by...
They will be, upon your approval, the
Right.
principals have been instructed to go ahead and submit those to the DOE prior to December 1st, so I'm
Is that
sure
the-
they'll be on that tomorrow.
Is that the deadline, Scott?
December 1st is the deadline, but we still haven't gotten all the information we need.
So the DOE gives us a deadline where we have to use data that they haven't given us yet?
Just
Okay.
to speak to that just a little bit, we were notified by the state superintendent of public instruction on Monday that today, this morning, we would get embargo, ISTEP information. I just checked. It's not there yet. So, I thought maybe they would be a little ahead of the game, so I was on about midnight last night. It wasn't there. I got on this morning when I first got up. It wasn't there, and we checked out periodically throughout the day. I think Trish even contacted somebody in Indianapolis. And they promised it's coming.
By midnight, hopefully.
So, that makes it very difficult for us to meet our deadlines. We're not given a lot of latitude on extending those deadlines. We give our reports anyway. And with the transition that's going to be happening in Indianapolis, I don't know how soon that's going to get straightened out.
But we're in compliance.
Absolutely.
And we're doing the best we can.
We still have a lot of information that the schools use, so.
Sure. Okay, you've heard this report about the improvement plans. What is your pleasure? Mr. Hilton, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Kirschner. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries 6-0. Okay, our next item is the CHS handbook revision. And Mr. Collins, do we start with you?
Sure. I will share that information. Mr. Judd made me aware of a situation. You approve our handbooks each year, and we have a situation. It's really a good situation, but it requires board action to amend the Connersville High School handbook, and it relates to students on the honor roll. And just a brief background, we have many students earning college credit, and we have 3 students this year who are taking Taco U classes, which are, now it's not the study of tacos, but my son would take that for sure. But it's take a class on us, take a course on us, and it's a college level course. The problem is, it does not count for high school credit, and these students are all well beyond what they need for high school credit. However, our handbook policy for students to be a part of honor roll and the academic recognitions need to be classified as a full-time student taking 6 courses. Well, with the heavy caseload that these 3 high-achieving students are taking, one student has, I believe, close to 60 credit hours, or she will, from college upon graduation, which is pretty remarkable. The handbook prohibits Mr. Judd from recognizing these students for honor roll because he allowed them to take a study hall with the heavy college courses and the heavy caseload they're doing, plus they're taking the Taco U class. And one student, I believe, is taking 2 of the college level courses. So it puts us in a dilemma. It goes against what the handbook policy is. So I'm requesting you that we just make one amendment to that. The DOE classifies these students as full-time students, and the details are in that memo. So I'm just asking that you approve that change in verbiage, that it states a full-time student rather than 6 credited courses. So it's a very slight change, and then that will be reflected in next year's handbook. So it's a new problem, but it's a good problem to have, and this is our best solution at this point in working through
So
it
a
for these
kid
kids.
that's taking extra classes could be denied being on the honor roll because they don't have enough of their 6 hours being actually Connersville High School classes.
Exactly, they have to be, dual credit classes count because
Right.
they count for high school and college.
Right.
This is solely a college class. So it's a dilemma we haven't faced, so.
And it's not just honor roll, because the requirements for our academic honor award, it talks about consecutive times on the honor roll. So not being on the honor roll is one thing, but then that hurts them on graduation requirements.
So they could get straight A's and still not be on the honor roll.
It can penalize them for that if we don't.
And not receive academic honors.
This is only because our handbook isn't up to date with what we're doing
Well,
today.
it's an unanticipated problem.
Right.
We were
But it's a
trying to
good
solve
problem.
It is, it is.
Yeah.
And so, and we talked about a lot of possibilities how to resolve it, but we've all agreed that this is probably the most expedient way to do that.
Can we make it retroactive to the first of the school year?
Yes, we're going to do that.
Okay,
So-
because that would protect those students
Exactly.
that are caught in this catch-22.
And that's the purpose of this, that we'll protect those kids and also be sure to recognize them appropriately going back to the first 9 weeks.
Okay,
So yes,
okay.
this will fix that for this year, but I just need your approval to make that change in the language. And it's noted at the bottom of the memo with what Mr. Judd suggested we do, and I support that and present that to you for approval.
Did Mr. Judd want to speak?
Mr. Judd, did you want to share anything else about that, or did I cover it?
Well, I just think it's a real important change that we need to make for our high-achieving students. We've never experienced it before. We've had students take 1 Taco U class during the school day, which meant they still had 6 CHS credits. It wasn't an issue. We didn't even think about it until this year when we had 3 students that were taking at least 2 Taco U classes or adding another study hall in there, and they were only at our school for 5 classes or 3 classes in one case. So there's no reason for us to penalize our high-achieving students who are, the one young lady will have almost 2 full years of college under her belt. And to not make honor roll is not anything that we want to inflict upon that student. We want to honor them for their achievements. So I would appreciate your agreement on the small change. And I will alert parents and students probably tomorrow.
They will be.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchett.
Okay, you've heard this recommendation to approve the change in the CHS handbook. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to?
I'll
to
make that
do
motion,
Okay,
Mr. President.
thank you. Ms. Savoy, do I hear a second? Mr. Hilton seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries 6-0. All right, that completes our action items for this evening. Next is public comments. Anyone wishing to make the board aware of suggestions, ideas, or comments may address the board at this time. Comments which involve personnel or students must be discussed in private. Do I see any public comments further? Seeing,
I had one. Again, as I had mentioned earlier to the board, I'm Jason Waterman, 3278 Serenity Parkway. As I had mentioned earlier, there is a discrepancy in the posted policies on your website, and I would just ask that the board look at that and get these reconciled in a timely fashion.
thank you, sir. Any further public comments? Okay, are there any reports from the superintendent's discussion groups? Principal director reports? Director of Human Resources report?
Just two real quick things, Mr. Burchett, that we are working with and visiting our mentors and mentees. These are our first and second year teachers. There are 41 first and second year teachers, and hats off to our mentor teachers that are providing that guidance for our new first and second year teachers. They're doing a really nice job there for support, guidance, and didn't have that program back when I started teaching. I don't know if they did with you either, but it's nice to have, and it's great support, so it works really well. The other, Mr. Judd is here tonight, and hats off to him. He's been working on that second chance breakfast. And Mr. Judd, I think we're close to reaching a milestone, and you're pushing really hard. And did you want to share just briefly about that?
We're just a few students away from serving breakfast to 400 students. That's great. That is, that looks about like 35% of our student population, but you also have to consider that around 250 students are at the Career Center during the morning. So we're gonna have punch and cookies when we hit the 400 student mark, and it's a testament to the hard work of the Chartwell's employees. Those ladies come over every day. There's no easy way to get those carts of food to the high school, and they come over every day, no matter what the weather is. And it's nice to see students grabbing a lunch and eating it, and what is not eaten is donated to local pantries. So I think we're doing a good thing for our kids.
And good job to your leadership as well in providing that with your staff, so thank you. That's all I have this evening, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Bayer. Director of Finance report.
Just a couple of items, Mr. Burchett. While we've all enjoyed the beautiful weather, our maintenance department has really struggled to keep appropriate temperature in our buildings. The middle school's been particularly challenging in some areas, but we do have a specialist from Automated Logic coming up. So the super weather is super unless you're in a building, apparently. And secondly, if you haven't noticed, I hope you'll take notice of the new concession stand that will be for the soccer fields and the softball area. It's really coming along nicely. So the first part of the project was done by Pridemark. However, now the Career Center has moved in and taken over doing a lot of the work. So I'm happy that we're able to use the Career Center and their students to help with that project. So, thank you.
Assistant Superintendent's report.
First, I want to thank you. Thank you for your trust in me, and it means a lot to be in my hometown, giving back to our kids, and the same for Ms. Crisaro. She's has deep roots here. And part of that, I want to shout, this is atypical for me to share, but Lizzie Mae Barrett was my 4th grade teacher at Frazee Elementary, and she just celebrated her 100th birthday, and my brother and I nominated her for the Hall of Fame years ago. And so I don't know if any of you know Lizzie Mae, but I just want to recognize her publicly, the impact she had on me as a 4th grader at Frazee, and to acknowledge she may be watching this meeting at some point. That's still a sharp lady, but just wanted to say that, and then thank you again.
And she still comes to the Retired Teachers Association.
She's amazing, yes.
She was there last month.
Yeah, she's an amazing lady.
Okay, Superintendent's report.
First, I'd like to congratulate the school board candidates that were successful and commend them for being here tonight at this meeting. I also want to congratulate Scott. He worked very hard last year, took a lot of classes, kept up his expected highly effective work here in this building, and somehow managed to still stay in touch with his family as they were transitioning over here. So I'm thrilled for him and wish him nothing but success, but I want to congratulate him, and I also want to congratulate Kim Crisaro on her being hired as assistant superintendent. Again, she's taken a lot of classes, and as she shared, she's a very busy person, but she's very committed to Fayette County School Corporation, and I think I'm leaving this corporation in very good hands, and so congratulations to you folks.
Good. Thank you. For the good of the cause,
Fayette County School Corporation lost a person over the last few weeks, Dr. Jerry Hathaway, who had done an awful lot for the kids. He even shaved his head during swim season when he was involved with that. And he was actually one of the first people, he and George Morris were actually two of the first people I met when I came here 30 years ago. And he was a great contributor to the school, and he will be missed, and certainly the community owes him a debt of gratitude for all that he did while he was involved here at the school system.
okay, anyone else?
I'd like to thank Grandview Elementary for presenting this evening. It's always a treat for board members when the various schools come and present. I'm always impressed at the things that our students are doing in their classrooms. It gives you just a warm feeling to know that we're doing the things that we're doing. I'd also like to invite everybody to the middle school Saturday between the hours of 4 and 7. There's a chicken dinner, and that's for the benefit of the basketball team. So if you're out Saturday between 4 and 7 and you're hungry for chicken, the middle school is the place to be.
Also, don't try to come too early because we got a basketball tournament there in the arena, and we have 6 games, and parking may be a problem, just to let everybody know. Our 7th grade has a basketball tournament in the arena the same day. So the middle school is going to be a place to be on Saturday, from about 9 to heaven knows when. So.
Any other comments? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the meeting is adjourned.